So the president is on a warpath against his own attorney general, Jeff Sessions, already maniacal, and then he's going to take it to a different level today, at least in stories that were broken today. I'm going to get to that in a second, but first I'm going to give you some background. As you might have seen this week, Donald Trump tweeted, "Why is Attorney General Jeff Sessions asking the Inspector General to investigate potentially massive FISA abuse?" Because that's what the Inspector General, if there is abuse, is supposed to investigate. And in fact, Sessions is trying to help you investigate something that is not necessarily an actual scandal at all. And he says at the end of the tweet, "Isn't the Inspector General an Obama guy? Why not use Justice Department lawyers?" And he says in big capital letters, Trump says about Sessions, "Disgraceful. I have never seen a president call his own attorney general graceful. No one has, because it's a crazy thing to do. If you think your attorney general is disgraceful, you should fire him instead of tweeting publicly." Okay, and they asked Jeff Sessions about it. Normally he doesn't strike back, but this time he had to answer because this is so unreal, over the top. He said, "As long as I am the attorney general, I will continue to discharge my duties with integrity and honor, and this department will continue to do its work in a fair and impartial manner according to the law and the Constitution." In other words, no, I'm not going to cover for you when we're going to follow the law here. I can't believe he's got me defending Jeff Sessions, but in this contest of two loathsome people, Trump is not only worse, but Sessions is right on the law. If you think there's an abuse, you ask the Inspector General. You don't do a political hatchet job because your boss asks you to. Okay, now Washington Post with a news story out today. Trump has apparently told associates that he has hired the best lawyers for his entire life, but is stuck with Sessions, who is not defending him and is not sufficiently loyal. For the 18th time, can someone educate the president? The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer in the country. He is not your lawyer. He's not the president's personal lawyer. He's the chief law enforcement officer in the country. So if you have broken the law, Donald Trump, he is supposed to investigate you. In this case, he didn't. He recused himself and he let the deputy attorney general make the case, or not make the case, do the investigation or not do the investigation. He recused himself, so he's not part of this, right? But he's like, "Why did you recuse yourself? You're supposed to defend me if somebody's doing a valid investigation of me." No, he's not. He's not supposed to do that. By the way, even if you thought that, Donald Trump, you're not supposed to be so stupid as to say it publicly, because then you're admitting in front of the whole country that you are trying to obstruct justice. But it gets, both worse and funnier, I guess, in a sense. The Post continues, behind the scenes, Trump has derisively referred to Sessions as Mr. MAGOO, a cartoon character who is elderly, myopic, and bumbling, according to people with whom he has spoken. He's calling his own attorney general Mr. MAGOO. I imagine if Obama was making fun of Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State behind the scenes and giving her stupid nicknames. Hey, look at Daffy Duck over there. We'd be like, why, is he mentally stable? And of course, that's the point here. The president is not anywhere near mentally stable. And he is in a panic to cover up whatever he did with the Russians, because he has got to end that investigation. In fact, now the investigation, of course, is looking at why he's in a panic, why he's obstructing justice in plain view in front of all of us. So in recent months, Mueller's team has questioned witnesses in detail about Trump's private comments and state of mind in late July and early August of last year, around the time he issued a series of tweets belittling his beleaguered attorney general. These people said the thrust of the questions was to determine whether the president's goal was to oust Sessions in order to pick a replacement who would exercise control over the investigation into possible coordination between Russia and Trump associates during the 2016 election, these people said. Now, there's your obstruction of justice. Now, look, it's not easy to prove. If Mueller wants to prove that, he's going to have to show two things. One, Trump wanted Sessions to leave so he can get someone to do his political dirty work and kill the investigation. One is he wants Sessions to leave for that reason. Well, Trump has basically admitted that in public and apparently in private. So that part's easy. That part's already done. And Trump did it for Mueller. The second part is still really hard. You'd have to show specifically with intent that Trump wanted to remove Sessions so that he could end the investigation because he thinks the investigation is going to uncover something about him. Look, I don't know that Mueller can prove that, but it would have been much harder to prove if he had to prove both parts. But Trump proved the first part for him. Yeah, I definitely want to get rid of Sessions, and it's definitely about this investigation. Okay, one last thing there. At the time, the White House advisor told the Washington Post reported that Trump was stunned that Sessions had not yet quit when he was calling him weak and beleaguered. The president said that the advisor added, had been hoping the attorney general would be so embarrassed by Trump's scathing comments that he would leave. Trump in this period also ordered his then chief of staff, Reince Priebus, to get a resignation letter from Sessions. Again, if they have all of that on the record in the investigation, now they're 2/3 of the way through proving that he was trying to obstruct justice. I want Sessions to leave. I want him to leave because of the investigation. Make him resign. I don't know that there's much left there in order to prove that he's trying to get him to get out of there because he wants to end the investigation of himself, which is obviously illegal. Obviously, it's obvious to everyone except the president and, of course, ironically, his myopic followers. So, speaking of which, let's go to irony. Now let's have a little bit of fun. That's the serious part. So, if you didn't grow up watching Mr. MAGOO, you might want some background on him. And this is good. The original MAGOO, Washington Post reports in a different article, was rich, resentful of the youth, pro-business, and functionally blind. And there was a riff, and it was a riff on the myopic conservatism of 1950s America. That kind of sounds like the conservatism of today. So Mr. MAGOO was actually a character making fun of conservatives back then. And I get that Trump's attacks against Sessions are not that complicated and they're not too cerebral and not based on necessarily the history of the actual cartoon of Mr. MAGOO. It's probably more because of looks. So let's take a look here. So that's Jeff Sessions. This is Mr. MAGOO. This is Jeff Sessions and Mr. MAGOO. That is a rare point I will concede to Donald Trump. Okay, now, but back to the original Mr. MAGOO. Here's some descriptions of him in a book about him. He was an irascible millionaire. Who does that sound like? Not Jeff Sessions, but perhaps a certain president that we know. Hold on. He had, quote, absolute self-confidence. And he wreaked havoc upon others. I'm pretty sure I know who that is. That's that guy. That also kind of fits. And finally, just a fun little fact for you guys to end the segment, having nothing to do with politics. The original voice of Mr. MAGOO was Jim Backus, Thurston Howell from Gilligan's Island. Apparently he had a little niche in doing rich people's voices. So God bless Jim Backus. That was a fun part of my youth. Okay, and what's gonna be really fun is seeing Donald Trump in handcuffs. If you wanna get the whole Young Turks show every single day, become a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And once you do, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
Or you might say,
I think it's weird.
Or you might say,
oops.
No, that won't be that one. It won't be that one. It'll be great, trust me. tytnetwork.com/join.